The SOS came through the Ranger frequency just after midnight, breaking the heavy silence of the valley like a blade through glass. The signal was short, fragmented, and desperate. Coordinates followed by a single phrase repeated twice. Taking fire. Pinned down. Multiple hostiles. At forward observation post-Kestrel, high above the frostbitten ridgeline, everyone froze. Radios crackled. Boots stopped mid-step. Even the wind seemed to pause. Captain Harlow looked up from the map table, his jaw tightening. Rangers didn't send SOS lightly. When they did, it meant something had gone terribly wrong. "Patch it through again," he ordered. The radio operator shook his head. "That was it, sir." Signal dropped. Silence returned, heavier than before. At the far end of the shelter, seated alone, a woman slowly closed her notebook. She had been sketching wind patterns, terrain angles, and probable sniper lanes. Not because she was told to, but because she always did. Her name was Evelyn Cross. She didn't look like what most soldiers imagine when they thought of a sniper. No loud confidence. No remarks. No swagger. She spoke rarely, moved softly, and avoided attention like it was a liability. Many new arrivals assumed she was support staff or intelligence analysis. They were wrong. Evelyn was the quietest shooter in the task force, and the deadliest. Captain Harlow glanced at her. "Cross, you heard it." She nodded once. "Yes, sir. They're Rangers. Alpha Platoon. Last intel said light resistance." Evelyn stood, already slipping into her cold weather gear. "Then intel is outdated." A younger lieutenant frowned. "With respect, sir, sending one sniper." "I'm not sending one sniper," Harlow cut in. "I'm sending the sniper." No one argued after that. The insertion was rough. Snow lashed sideways as the helicopter dropped Evelyn 2 ridge lines away from the Ranger position. She moved alone, skis cutting silent lines through untouched white. Her rifle, custom-tuned, suppressed, and wrapped against the cold, rested comfortably against her shoulder like an extension of her body. She reached the overlook within 40 minutes. Through her scope, the scene unfolded with brutal clarity. The Rangers were trapped in a shallow bowl of rock and ice. Enemy fighters, at least 24, had the high ground. Machine gun nests. Mortars prepped but not firing yet, likely waiting for dawn. A textbook ambush. Evelyn exhaled slowly. She didn't rush. She never did. She calculated wind drift, temperature, altitude, enemy movement patterns. She marked targets not by rank, but by threat. The first hostile was a spotter on the far ridge. Crack that he dropped without a sound. The second was a machine gunner repositioning. Crack. Down. Within 30 seconds, confusion rippled through the enemy lines. Contact left. Someone shouted in a foreign tongue. They fired blindly into the snow. Evelyn shifted 10 feet to her right, already invisible again. Crack. A mortar operator collapsed mid-reach. Below, the Rangers felt it before they understood it. The incoming fire slowed, then stopped. Sergeant Mason, bleeding from shoulder wound, looked up in disbelief. "What the hell?" One of his men whispered. "Sir, someone's hunting them." Evelyn moved like a ghost across the ridge, never firing twice from the same position. Every shot was deliberate. Every target removed was another second of breathing room for the trapped Rangers. She eliminated commanders first, then heavy weapons, then runners trying to regroup. The enemy never saw her. They never heard her. They just fell. 20 minutes in, the Rangers began pushing forward, emboldened by the sudden shift. They advanced cautiously, covering angles they hadn't dared to before. Evelyn adjusted her scope and smiled faintly. This was why she existed. Not for medals, not for recognition, but for moments like this, when everything depended on precision. Back at base, Captain Harlow listened to the open channel, heart pounding. Enemy fire reduced, Mason reported. Unknown friendly sniper providing overwatch. Harlow allowed himself a breath. He knew exactly who that unknown was as dawn crept over the mountains. The last hostile attempted to flee. Evelyn tracked him for nearly a kilometer. She waited until he reached the tree line. Then she fired. Silence returned to the valley. When the Rangers finally linked up with their position hours later, they found nothing but faint tracks in the snow and a single marker carved into a rock. Clear. Sergeant Mason stared at it. She saved us alone. Back at base, Evelyn cleaned her rifle quietly as medics rushed past with the wounded Rangers. Captain Harlow approached. They're alive because of you. She nodded, not looking up. They were never supposed to die. He hesitated. You want to debrief? In the morning. She stood, slung her rifle, and walked away, unnoticed. As always, the Rangers didn't meet Evelyn Cross until nearly 12 hours after the firefight ended. By then, the valley was quiet again, too quiet. Smoke curled from abandoned enemy positions. Frozen footprints told the story of a force that had arrived confident and left broken, scattered, or dead. Sergeant Mason stood with his platoon at the extraction point, watching helicopters descend. Medics had stabilized the wounded. Ammunition was low. Nerves were still tight. "What I want to know," one ranger muttered, "is who the hell that sniper was." Mason didn't answer. He had replayed the night 100 times already. The precision, the timing, the way the shots came exactly when they were needed. Never early, never late. That wasn't luck. That was mastery. At T-base, the briefing room was full. Ranger leadership, intelligence officers, and two generals sat around a long table as Captain Harlow entered. He placed a single folder down in front of them. Operation outcome? One general asked. Alpha platoon survived. Zevokia. Hostile force neutralized. A murmur spread. And the sniper? Another asked. The one who turned the fight. Harlow didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. The IT showed Evelyn Cross in plain fatigues, rifle slung, eyes calm. Several officers frowned. "That's her?" someone asked, clearly disappointed. "Yes, sir." One colonel scoffed. "She did all that alone?" Harlow's voice hardened. "She's done worse with less." Silence followed. The truth about Evelyn Cross was not classified, but it was rarely discussed. She had grown up in silence. A childhood shaped by isolation, long winters, and a father who taught her to shoot before he taught her to drive. She learned patience before speed, precision before power. She joined the military not to prove anything, but because she was good at what others struggled to do. Extremely good. Her record was spotless. Her confirmed kills were uncomfortable for most officers to read. She never celebrated, never spoke about it, never asked for recognition. She simply did the job, again and again. When the Rangers finally met her, it wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no handshakes. Evelyn was sitting on a crate near the flight line, rewrapping her rifle. When Sergeant Mason approached, he stopped a few feet away. "Ma'am," he said quietly. She looked up. "You're healed. Thanks to you." She shrugged slightly. "Thanks to your men holding position." Mason swallowed. "We owe you our lives." She met his eyes then, really met them. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "Just make sure it was worth saving." That was it. She went back to her rifle. The Rangers walked away changed. Word spread anyway that IT always did. Not her name, but the story did a quiet sniper. One shooter. Dozens of hostiles. An SOS answered by someone the enemy never saw. Among the Rangers, she became something else that was standard. Weeks later, intelligence intercepted enemy chatter. They were talking about a ghost, a woman-shaped shadow in the mountains, that a sniper who killed leaders first and fear second. Some refused to operate at night anymore. Some refused to operate at all. Psychological impact. Severe. Evelyn never heard most of it. She was already deployed again. On our next mission, a young sniper trainee was assigned to observe her from a distance. The trainee watched as Evelyn waited hours without firing. Watched her pass on easy shots. Watched her adjust by millimeters while others would have rushed. Finally, after a single, perfect shot ended the engagement, the trainee whispered over comms, "How did you know that was the right moment?" Evelyn answered after a pause. "Because panic makes noise," she said. Silence tells the truth. Back at base, a plaque was quietly installed in the hallway. Few people use an O name and O rank, just words, to the unseen, whose aim saved many. Some nights, Rangers would look toward the mountains and wonder if she was out there, watching, waiting, They hoped she was, because if the worst ever happened again, if another SOS ever went unanswered, they believed she would hear it, and someone, somewhere would start falling, one by one.